probably agree on.
Yeah, the playoff team for sure.
So do you.
I mean, I tell you what, I don't think there was a more accurate state. And
if they struggle again, I mean, I don't think there's any way you can keep Alex Critch, but.
What's going on, y'all? Bud Elliott here. It's my college football summer school series on the Cover 3 podcast. And today I'm talking Stanford. A lot of things going on with the Cardinals. I'm going to bring in my man, Jackson Moore of Cardinal 247. Does a great job covering Stanford for us at 24/7 Sports. Jackson, welcome back to the show, man.
Thanks very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. This was an absolute blast to do last year. And I think we both thought Stanford made a pretty damn good hire following up David Shaw. But that roster was in a challenging situation, as you so eloquently detailed for us last year on this very show. I'm excited to kind of see what these guys can do this year. And I'm looking at it. I think Bill Connolly had them top 2 or top 3 in returning production in his latest numbers, as did other guys who do some of the returning production stuff. So I'll open it up with this. Where, if anywhere, could this team be a lot better than it was last year?
Yeah, that's the tough part, because I cover these other schools and they're all bringing in these transfers, and you can say, well, that position looks completely different from last year. Whereas Stanford, the way things are there right now, it's pretty old school. It's a lot of year over year, just improvement, experience. And from that standpoint, you're looking more at kind of the subtle improvements. I think quarterback is a big one, just because it was such a question mark last year. I think Ashton Daniels had a really good spring. Then you've got Elijah Brown as a true freshman, a stellar recruit who could also factor in. I think whoever is the quarterback out of those two guys is going to be a significant improvement to where they were last September. I think the D-line, potentially, that was a young group last year. They're a little bit older. They're bringing in a transfer, one of the few rare ones that looks to be a factor early on. So for the most part, you're looking at small improvements, but you also don't have much leaving. So there's also not really a position where you say, shoot, they lost a star there and they couldn't hit the portal. It's just a team that should be kind of across the board a bit better than they were last year.
You mentioned Daniels had a good spring and showed improvement. Was there a specific area that you noticed or that you heard about him, really improving in, or was just kind of more of an overall feel for the position in the offense, or what did you see?
Yeah, just an overall solid spring, just consistently putting together good days, making very few mistakes, making some highlight plays on the run, in the pocket. It was just Elijah Brown had a solid spring, and I kind of thought that if he had that type of spring, that he would be in good position to maybe take over the starting job, but it's all relative, and Daniels just looked really impressive. So I think he's relatively put himself in a good spot to keep the job. We'll see how it plays out in the fall. We know Troy Taylor is not shy to play 2 quarterbacks. So, but Daniel's definitely up to stock with the spring.
One guy we see on a lot of NFL lists is Elliott, and I cannot pronounce his last name. If you can help me out here, the receiver who destroyed Colorado and Travis Hunter there.
Yeah, I mean, heck of a season last year. When he got there the year before, I got to see him his first couple fall camp practices and thought, man, this guy might be for real. And then he just had a devastating injury during his freshman fall camp, and it took him a while to get back, but once he did, he was even better than before, and exciting to see what he can do with the year under his belt. I think also, if everyone's healthy, they're going to have more weapons besides him too, that are going to be able to take some pressure off of him. Emmett Mosley, a true freshman, had a crazy spring. Day one was with the first team. Ishmael Sissi as well is another one that redshirted last year, should be a main factor this season. So they've got more guys to take attention off of him this year.
Let's fast forward 6 weeks from this recording. Now, I'm not really sure when we're going to run this, but about 6 weeks from this recording, who's a guy who you don't anticipate being voted onto the all ACC team, which seems, I don't know if it seems weird to you, bro. This is extremely weird to say to me, but Stanford player on the all ACC team who's not going to be voted on, who you think has a pretty good chance to be, come the end of the season.
A good one. Maybe Colin Wright. I mean, he's kind of established himself as a starter, but I thought this spring he just looked like, one of the key players on the team, which wasn't necessarily the kind of perception I had of him last year. He just felt like, a starter, and he had a lot of highlight moments over the course of camp. So I could see him, going from being a first-year starter last year to just being a real impact player this year.
What with this much experience coming back, where are the positions that Stanford could most survive having to, kind of dip into its depth a little bit?
Um, you know, I, that's a, they're a little deeper, I think, this year, but there's not a lot of positions that probably go beyond the second team. I think inside linebacker, they brought in a couple of players that should factor in, and they've brought, they have a grad transfer now. They've got some older players at inside backer, the kind of guys that might have left in previous years, the way things have been going with the whole system. So they're a little bit deeper there. They were very thin at D line during the course of spring, but once I think the full group's healthy for the fall, that's a spot that they may be 4, 5, 6 guys that can be counted on to play there. You know what? I totally whiffed on the outside linebacker position. That's where they've got 4 or 5 like 4-star products that are all ready to contribute. So definitely outside linebacker is one where if the second teamers are in there, they're still going to be pretty good.
Nice. What's the fall position battle or two that you're most looking forward to covering, and that will really impact the team?
Yeah, certainly quarterback to see. You know, I'm excited for it, but I don't think Troy Taylor's going to tip his cap much, even over the course of watching some of practice. I don't think we're really going to know exactly what his plans are going into the opener, but I am still excited for it nonetheless to see how it plans out between Daniels and Brown, and even Justin Lamson is still in that mix. Curious to see just if there's any shuffling at the O-line. That's a young group. You know, maybe if a freshman can come in and steal a spot there. A running back, just there's been several years in a row now where Emmitt Smith or EJ Smith and Casey Filkins, they've had so much hype, and not to speak poorly on them, but they didn't quite live up to the hype over their Stanford careers, and now it's kind of a clean slate. So I think some guys, Cedric Irvin's had a good spring. I think Ryan Butler is kind of an unknown player that could be really impactful, and they've got 3 freshmen coming in. I think at least one of those guys will take a spot on the 2 deep when it's all said and done.
I don't know who Stanford pissed off at the ACC offices, but I mean, no Miami, no Florida State, but they do have to face Clemson, the Hokies, SMU, NC State, and Louisville, and they also have to play. But they open with TCU. They get Notre Dame, and Cal Poly is pretty easy. San Jose lost an awful lot, obviously, but like as since you cover them as well, I know that home game against Wake feels really, really pivotal for them this season. What's like the best case you can see for these guys?
Yeah, I think last year the ceiling was very thick. There was a lot of Pac-12 schools on the schedule that there was no chance, and the winnable games were few. This is still a relatively tough schedule for them, but there's more games where they could potentially get over the hump. I think TCU is a big tone setter. It's a tough team, but it is at home. Of course, the Horned Frogs dropped off a lot last year, and maybe you can get that one in week 1. You get a chance to kind of reset at Syracuse, the Open ACC, even if the non-conference doesn't go all that great. That as far as opening and having to travel to the East Coast, that's pretty advantageous to have that one. The Wake Forest is a big game. The end of the season is also pretty critical. You always feel like you can win against Cal, no matter what's going on in your season. And then you've got San Jose State on the road too, who are, if you drop that one, that's also going to erase whatever goodwill you had over the first 11 weeks. So I just think there's more attainable games for them this year. Last year, it was hard to see where they could win more than 3. This year, at least, you can see a route to maybe 4 or 5 if things really go well, maybe 6 if some things go right.
Has Coach Taylor talked about how Stanford will manage the travel at all?
I believe they're going to go a day early. I think just in general, the ACC has done a pretty good job in terms of, they only have to go east of Texas 3 times each year. And even for the other teams in the conference, you're only going to the West Coast like once every 2 or 3 years. So it's not as ridiculous as it seems, but I do think that it is odd where you've got Cal and Stanford. They're both in the ACC. They're going to see like 3 of the same teams on their schedule. So yeah, they're conference mates. But how do you really compare what those 2 records are going to be in their first year in the ACC when there's so few similar opponents? And then you expand that out to the standings. It's going to be tough to orchestrate 17 teams with 8 conference games, I think.
Absolutely. Jackson, really appreciate the time here on Stanford, man. Like I'm I'm just confident that Taylor's a good coach, and bringing back that much talent, like even if there's not, well, maybe I shouldn't say talent, bringing back that much experience, you got to think that they make real improvements on the field just by limiting mistakes and having another year in that system just based on his track record. So we'll be following your coverage. Cardinal 247, man. It'll be a fun time.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely.